Hi guys, today I'm going to run you through a routine. I've actually given this whole routine to a patient, and the idea behind it is it's a bit of a whole body stretch and loosen up, but then we have a specific focus into activating the core muscle groups to help spinal control, and I'll explain a little bit later about how it will also help strengthen your upper body and your hips. So the point of this routine is to have a good stretch and then activate the core and get the shoulders talking to the core, talking to the hips. So that should help your posture, and it should just make you feel a better walker and mover in general. I'll do most of the explanation at the end, so I'll run through it, telling you what to do, and then if you're interested, I'll hang around to the end of the video and I'll break down some of the movements and tell you why they're important. Some of the core activation, for example, is not what you commonly see, and I have theories about why we should be doing what we're about to do. So if you want to know why we're doing it, hang around to the end, but otherwise you can just follow along this routine. It will stretch your hips, your back, your shoulders, and then it will activate your core as well. So let's get started. The way I like to start my floor routines is in what I call a crazy cat. So whereas the cat-cow is more of a linear up-down sort of movement, the crazy cat has no rules. You start in this tabletop position and then you just scoop your back and wriggle around. You can push back towards a child's pose, you can push over towards your wrists, you can arch your back up towards the ceiling, you can extend your back down and belly down towards the floor, all the while just wriggling and scooping through your back. I always say that movement is both diagnostic and therapeutic. So what I mean by that is when I'm moving, I'm paying attention to my body. If there's a tight bit, I just notice. So I'm like, that's a tight bit in my body. That's diagnostic. So then it's therapeutic because I find that tightness, but then just keep wriggling and moving until it feels less tight. So the crazy cat explores your hips, your shoulders, your back, and you can pay attention and take note for later when you try and stretch it through. Once you've done that for maybe about a minute or so, widen the knees slightly, and now I'm just going to go into a wide-kneed child's pose, still bringing a little bit of movement through, a little rock of the hips, and I can also just take my hands one way, which will really open up my lats, and then take my hands the other way, opening up these lats, and again, just wriggle around for 45 seconds or so. After going from the child's pose, I'm going to bring in a really simple movement of rocking. Now, rocking is, even though this is largely a flexibility exercise, it's helping to stretch my hips and my shoulders and open up my spine as well. This is also one of the first precursors to activating our core, because rocking is it's known as one of our primitive reflexes. It's part of our natural development before we start to crawl. So this is still a helpful, even though it's something we do as a toddler, it's still a helpful thing to activate as an adult as well. So this is largely a flexibility exercise, but it's just waking up our brain into thinking about how to use our shoulders and hips and core all together. I like to bring a little twist though, so I just say imagine a torch is coming out your belly button, shine the torch at one knee when you push back, and if you want to exaggerate that, you can thread the needle in that direction as well. So we're just going to twist through there, and then after rocking and you're starting to feel nice and loose, we'll go into the lizard pose. So here, make sure your knee at the back is comfortable. I'm trying to draw a straight line from my back knee to my shoulders. So a common mistake I see here is that people have a bit of an angle through here, but you want to be driving those hips down. Hands come inside that front foot. Push the hips through, chest up. Take nice deep belly breaths. So as you're breathing in, your belly's going out. I always say breathe into the stretch. You're trying to push your belly into that stretch. You can also just wiggle that front knee with the front hand, or you can reach up to the ceiling. Just do little pulses into an upper back rotation. And if you want to get really into your hips, you can try and bend your elbows and rest your elbows on the floor. If that just feels impossible, you can just do little pumps with your elbows and just bring a little twist into your upper back. From the lizard pose, we'll switch one hand over that front leg and straighten the front leg into a lovely little hamstring stretch. Here I just breathe and sink, trying to imagine pushing my belly and chest down towards my thigh. And once that feels a little bit looser, I'll wiggle this foot across and lower that shin down. The angle of your shin here should be just wherever you're comfortable. It doesn't have to be at a 90-degree position. It can even be tucked quite a long way back if you like. And then adjust your back leg until you find a nice glute stretch, and now we're in the pigeon pose. So first of all, this will involve just sitting up nice and straight. Try and play around with tilting your pelvis, and you'll find the best bit of stretch and in your hip. Once you've got it, you can just wiggle side to side and breathe and try and get a little bit deeper into that stretch. And once that feels looser, you can go further into it by dropping down onto your elbows and then taking your hands even further forward, so you just fold down onto the floor, and that gets quite deep and nice into the hip. So once you've done that, that's a nice little routine for one side of your body, and you'd then maybe sit into the child's pose just as a nice intermediary and then go to the other side. So I'll just rattle through that just so you see. So it's from the lizard pose, wiggle, wiggle, twisty, twisty, into the hamstring stretch. I just call this a triangle, but I'm sure it's got a better name than that. And then wiggle the foot across and down into the pigeon pose on the other side, wiggling in all those different positions, just doing what feels good. So that's kind of the stretching component of this routine. I would obviously spend a little bit more time than I just did showing you in each of those positions. I'm really trying to pay attention to what my body's telling me. I'll move to find tightness and notice what needs work, and then once I've found it, I'll then use movement again, just trying to wiggle and unstick until it feels a bit looser. So from that little stretch routine, we're going to go back to rocking, the rocking we did earlier, but add a little bit more of a stability emphasis to it. Earlier, we had more of a mobility emphasis by just keeping the knees on the floor and rocking. This is very easy, but nourishing to the joints. To make it tougher, all we're going to do is curl our toes under and lift our knees off the floor. So start with your shins parallel to the floor, and we'll push our hips back. And now obviously my knees come a bit higher as I do that. And then just push forwards and rock forwards and backwards. Just do this until you feel a light burn through your hips or your thighs, and then you can have a little rest. And then so that we move in different planes of motion, you can go back to the same start position. And whereas earlier I was saying have a torch, imagine a torch coming out your belly button. Now imagine two torches coming out your knees, and you'll just shine those torches side to side, side to side. So you could just make a little routine of doing a few forwards, backwards rocks. This is activating your core. It's also helping your foot and toe flexibility. And then you could do a few twisty twisties, and that's just activating the core. I'll explain why that's helpful later. Get your breath back, have a little rest, and the final core activation routine, which is also a nice spinal mobility routine, is a dynamic plank. So start with a kneeling plank, a kneeling press-up position, where you want to have a straight line from your knees to your shoulders. If at the beginning you need to have a slight bend in the hips, that's completely fine. All of this will work, but just know that that's going to be making it easier, and you want to gradually make it harder by pushing the hips down. And we'll just start by swaying the hips side to side. If that feels comfortable, then you can just start to take one hand off the floor. When you take one hand off the floor, try and keep neutral through your spine. So the first one I did, I really shifted, and I just realized that was a mistake. So try and stay fairly neutral and then relax. Try and stay fairly neutral and relax. If that feels okay, then you can just start to reach around you in space with your hands. You can reach in all different directions. And this is really activating the core, the hips, the shoulder muscles. And then when that feels too easy, you can do all of that, but in a full press-up position, just swaying the hips side to side. Take one hand off the floor, take the other hand off the floor. So what we're doing by taking the hand off the floor is bringing a lot more effort into the shoulders, if you want, and then also that drives more movement into your upper back. Whereas if you want to bring more movement into your lower back, we just need to use the legs. And you can do this starting in the kneeling press-up position. Just lift one leg up, this activates the glutes, and then take it across, take it out to the side, take the knee across you, and same the other side. All of this is really activating the core, but helping the glutes get a bit stronger. And then that's all exaggerated from the full press-up position as well. So I'm out of breath. That's my workout for the day done. Okay, so the idea behind the first bit of the routine is that we're stretching from the hips through the core, the spine and the shoulders, and then we follow it up with the core activation. Now, the rocking, the second version of rocking, and the dynamic plank, the reason I like them is that if you think about what the core does in life, it attaches to this crest on top of the pelvis, and then it's a big balloon-like structure that attaches to every single lumbar vertebra as well, and then it attaches around the lower ring of the ribs and the thorax. So this big band of muscle, its goal is to control the relationship between the pelvis and the thorax. So when our hands are reaching, that's twisting our thorax. When our feet are stepping and landing on the floor, that's controlling our pelvis. And then this big band of muscle controls that relationship. So sometimes when we say twist and bend and reach for something, our foot will land on the floor, our pelvis will shift and twist, our hand will be reaching, that will be twisting our thorax, and then the goal of this muscle is just to control it. In this example though, in pretty much everything we care about in life, our pelvis is moving around. It's twisting, it's swaying, it's side to sidey, it's twisty, forwards, backwards, and then at the same time our thorax is moving. So if we start doing exercises for our core that fix the pelvis, like a sit-up or a leg raise, we're not going to be training our brain to understand how to control the pelvis in space. So I much rather doing things that get everything talking together, get my shoulders controlling my thorax, get my hips and pelvis get my hip muscles controlling my pelvis, and then controlling that space in between by doing some dynamic movements using hands and feet as a driver. So I can't remember the last time I did a sit-up. I much prefer to do dynamic planks, dynamic reaches, rocking variations, crawling variations, because in all of those things, I'm trying to get all my body parts working together, and it just so happens to be really activating the core, rather than trying to isolate the core, fix the pelvis on the floor, which actually never really happens in life. So hopefully that makes sense. Hopefully you like the routine. Once you get the hang of it, you can really rattle through it, and everything we did there should take 10 minutes or so. But at the same time, if you're feeling particularly tight one day, you could spend more time with the stretching, or if you want to really focus on the strength stuff, spend more time with the planks at the end. So you can change it day by day as you feel fit. If you've got any questions, comment below. And if you like the channel, hit subscribe as well.